So I'm not here to tell you that sheep are hard, although some days are. They're actually incredibly forgiving animals and rather easy keepers, some people might call them. They've survived thousands of years, despite how we've tried to complicate things for them. But I started this journey after 50 with no farming background, just determination, reading a lot of books, watching a lot of videos. And 5 years later, I feel like I'm getting close to having a profitable sheep operation here in Tennessee. And every truth I'm going to share with you today, whether they apply to you, whether you want to just some pets or as lawnmowers or business, I think they might help. I certainly would want to have known them when I got started. So let's get into it. First truth I'll share with you is they're not as hard to keep alive as the internet might try to convince you. They're not heat-seeking missiles looking for a place to die. Sheep are pretty easy keepers. So the first truth I'll tell you is just follow the 90% rule. 90% of the time your sheep are fine. They can handle cold a lot better than you think. They can handle the outdoors a lot better than you think. You don't have to have crazy shelter for them. They've been living out in the high mountains in Europe and all over the world for thousands of years. They can certainly handle most of the climates in North America. Maybe not the extremes without some shelter, but certainly most of the United States, 90% of the time, they're fine. They're fine in the rain. They're fine on mediocre forage. They're fine on mediocre hay. So about 90% of the time, you're probably worried about things you don't need to be worried about. They really don't just die suddenly. I mean, no more suddenly than any other person or animal might die. And if you get a sizable flock, you're going to have sheep that pass away from a variety of different illnesses and accidents. But no more than any other, I don't think. I don't know if there's any statistics out there, but I haven't found that to be the case. I still have my original sheep from 5+ years ago, all but one anyway. And so they're not just trying to find a place to die. They're very easy to take care of for the most part. They take care of themselves. The question is, right, is how well they perform. How fast do they grow? How fast can you get into market weights? Those are all different questions. But just to get sheep on your place, stop listening to the trolls on the internet. They're rather easy keepers. Just to get them on your place and keep them alive. That's not that difficult. The performance piece is the piece I'm learning, which is a little more difficult to figure out. But don't be so scared to get them. They're rather easy keepers. And everyone says you need 2 sheep. Well, they're right, but I think they're kind of wrong. 2 sheep are very anxious. I would suggest 6, at least 5 or 6. When you get an actual flock, they're far more confident about what they're doing. Some can keep their eyes up while others are eating. But if you only got 2, whenever I've segregated a couple off, they just seem very nervous. They don't eat very well. They don't seem very comfortable. I don't see them laying down, chewing their cud like the rest of the flock. So in my limited experience, I would say get a half a dozen at least. And if you do happen to lose one, which it does happen, things happen, you're not down to 1, and then you're scrambling to get a pair if you just started with 2. If you have 6 and you lose one, God forbid, you still have a flock. And here's the part that no one mentions. Well, I shouldn't say no one. Some people do mention it, but it's time on target, right? It doesn't take any more time on target to take care of 2 or 6. You're not going to spend any more time caring for that half a dozen sheep than you are for 2 sheep. It's the time it takes you to get out there, the time it takes you to move the fence, the time it takes you to water them. I suspect 2 and 6 are seconds of difference, maybe a couple minutes, but it's not a lot more time invested, and your sheep are going to be better off. These girls are in here because we've been kind of babying them. They both hurt their backs on the feeder, rubbing their backs this time of year. They got some mites or some lice on their back, and they ended up scratching their back to where it actually split their skin. And so we've been having them doctor them in there, give them a little bit of boost. Once they hurt themselves, they weren't feeding that well, and so they thinned up pretty quick. But again, if you're paying attention and you're watching for these things, catch them in time. They're doing great now. I'm just going to keep them here for a couple more weeks while they recover, and they'll be back with the flock. So the truth number 3 is the first fence you have doesn't have to be permanent. It doesn't need to be your forever fence in your forever location. I would encourage you to get temporary fencing of some kind. I've analyzed every option that I could for my context here, for my property here in Middle Tennessee. Calculated the cost of putting in permanent fencing. It was, as you might imagine, outrageous. And ended up investing in $300 or $400 worth of Electronet fencing from Premier One. That stuff, Electronet, it's not permanent. It's not particularly beautiful, but it absolutely works. I would encourage you to check it out. Lots of folks that move on to permanent fencing options will sell their used electronetting fencing. I've seen it on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist many times. Here's the liberation. You get to start simple like we've talked about and upgrade strategically as you learn your property, as you learn the flow of rotations, as you learn how your sheep are going to be, where your water sources are most convenient to install, those kind of things. Kip, lie down. Good boy. So I'm gradually replacing sections of my property here with permanent fencing, and that has made things a little easier, but I did it based on actual use and not theories. That electric net fencing though, I'm still using it 5 years later, plus I'm still using those original strands. I've since added a few to it, but I'm using those original ones, and I put some repairs on them, no doubt, but they're still functional. They're still using, they're still holding the sheep in, they're still keeping predators out, they're still holding my guardian dogs in. We all know this, right? Your sheep don't care, and your guardian dogs don't care if your fence is Instagram worthy. They care that it's there. That's what you care about, that they're where you left them, and predators aren't messing with them, and your guardians are with your sheep. And this Electronet fencing will get you started rather easily. My guardian dogs, as I mentioned before, started out as pups out there, and so they could very easily jump that 3-foot Electronet. They simply don't, and neither do my sheep. Goats, that's another story for another day. And I would encourage you to check out Electronet fencing. It worked for me, still working for me 5 years later, and I'm slowly adding some permanent fence, but I'm not sure in the foreseeable future when I'm going to get away completely from Electronet fencing. It just works too well for me here. And you can forget the dramatic stuff, birthing complications, predator attacks, mysterious illness, all the things we've talked about so far. You know what you're actually going to think about every single day? Water. A sheep can drink a gallon a day, a couple gallons a day, maybe when it's hot or they've just hit the mineral hard, maybe several gallons a day, maybe more, maybe 6. So if you got 6 sheep, that's 36 gallons on a hot day. That's 4.5 standard buckets, if I can do math off the top of my head real quick, right, that you're hauling, if you're hauling buckets, if you don't have hoses that'll reach where you are. Hey ladies. We're just finishing off just the last of this pasture regrowth. They came through here and grazed this probably 3 or 4 months ago, and then I clipped it. There's still a little bit of brush growing in it. And now I'm just bringing them back through it very quickly. I only spent a couple days on it. Just to grab a little bit of that fescue regrowth. And they seem to do well on it. We're moving them quick, every 2 or 3 days. But you got to keep this water out here. My water infrastructure is not permanent, so that's one of this year's goals. But until then, I'm still running hoses. It's got to be done, especially when it's dry forage and then and hit that mineral real hard, they'll hit this water a little harder. I think I heard early on that they didn't drink a whole lot of water in the winter. I haven't found that to be true. Even the few times we've had snow, and they definitely don't hit it as hard as they hit it in July or August for sure, but they drink water for sure, at least here in our area. They're still drinking some water, especially when they're eating this dry forage and hitting that mineral. Hey ladies. Just a little bit of attention they're showing me tells me it's time to move. I'm rotating tomorrow actually. So I'll get the last little bit out of here. And there's still 3 or 4 inches. Hard to see that on camera, but there's still 3 or 4 or 5 inches of grass here. So we're not nipping it down to the dirt. And then we'll move on. Hey, if you can lay off that tree, that'd be great. Hey! You're gonna beat up my trees I'm trying to grow out here. Trying to grow up for their shade. They're steady trying to tear them down. I see, baby girl. Ow. Oh. There we go. Done this enough, very similar to my temporary fencing, that I kind of know where I need permanent water installed at this point. And that's my one of my projects for the upcoming year in 2026 is to get some permanent water points. I'll still be hauling hoses to some degree, but at least closer. Right now I'm running water probably 300 yards with hoses, which isn't a great option, but it's what works for me right now. And it's helped me figure out the lay of the land and where I need those permanent water points. So start simple like everything else, a stock tank and a hose point. Everything else can wait though, water can't. So will become your daily obsession. That's truth number 4. So people spend, truth number 5, people spend months, if not longer, researching breeds, Dorsets versus Hampshires, hair sheep versus wool sheep, even in the hair sheep, the different types of hair sheep, whether they're good in the heat or not, Katahdins versus Dorpers, or Australian whites, or Royal whites. You know what actually matters though, I think, although obviously I'm a fan of hair sheep so I don't have to shear up their wool, I think probably what matters most for the success of the animal is what kind of forage do you have them on, or what kind of hay are you feeding, what are you feeding. That's probably not something I appreciated early on. And maybe not even for a couple, 2 or 3 years, didn't really appreciate the kind of forage. I assumed if there was forage in front of them, they were going to do great, and that just hasn't been the case. Some of this forage on my property is better than other forage. Some of it has much healthier grass, much higher protein grass than other areas. And when I try to stockpile for winter, a lot of this trash that grows out here shades out my good grasses. And so when I go in there, it's past its most nutritious phase, if it was ever there. And so the forage has become much more an area that I've tried to research and study and figure out when it has good forage and when I need to supplement with hay, when I need to supplement with feed and actual nutrition. Different times of the year, regardless of the breed, there's different nutritional needs. That's also something you figure out that nobody really tells you. You hear these people talk about, lots of folks, just put them out on grass. If they can't survive on your grass, if they can't survive in your system, then they don't need to be on your farm. That just hasn't held true for me. The first couple of years, I just left them on grass, and they survived. Probably the first 3 years, to be honest with you, before I supplemented a single grain or simple, even a hay bale. The first big winter we had, I had to supplement some hay because everything was covered in snow. But my sheep definitely did not perform. My sheep definitely did not grow to what I would consider slaughter weight within the first year. They were just very slow to grow on my grass alone, on my rotation schedule alone. Now we've made some improvements there. We've made some improvements in rotations. We've made some improvements with their nutrition during certain times of the year, and we're seeing slow and gradual improvements there. But I think still the truth holds. More important than the breed you get, more important than how ideally they might perform, is, can they perform that way on your farm? Do you have the forage or the availability of hay to feed them, or are you going to have to supplement it all year round, or certainly a large part of the year, which gets very expensive? So bad forage, it doesn't matter how high a price you pay for those prize genetics, it's not going to save you. I've invested in very reasonably priced sheep, and I've invested in very high priced rams. I bought a very nice ram, registered Katahdin from a very nice breeder 2 seasons ago, and he literally starved to death on my farm because at the time I was feeding solely grass. And while I was told he was coming from a grass-based system, I'm not sure that was absolutely true, because he did not do well here. But I've also since realized, with some research and some grace, that maybe just the forage I put him on my farm wasn't substantial enough, wasn't good enough nutrition to really help that ram perform. But he literally starved to death. And before I realized what was going on, I could not recover that ram. And so I lost that investment completely. So I'm convinced your genetics won't save you. You'll spend the difference on supplements, vet bills, and lost productivity. So you need to be concerned about your forage. I haven't went as far as to get it tested yet, but that's one of my goals this year too, is to gather up some of my forage in its prime and get it tested and see what the different parts of my farm, what each area looks like, and to probably just confirm what I'm already figuring out through practice, that there's some much healthier parts of my farm than others. So truth number 5 is forage quality matters. Your hay quality matters. It's not all equal. Every square bale is not equal. Every round bale is not equal. And your forage, even different places on your own farm, are not equal. So I'm out here filling up water. I'm trying to talk about water and forage, and it's pretty obvious that these ladies want to move. They're paying me way too much attention. I mentioned that several times. Typically they'd be out doing their own thing, but I wasn't planning on rotating them until tomorrow. But clearly they think otherwise. And while I think there's probably enough forage to last the day, I'm going to go ahead and get a move while I'm out here. So it's not always based on a strict schedule that you may have set on your calendar. It's often also based on the forage quality and availability that might drive your rotations, like it did today. Come on, girls. Come on, girls. They know the drill pretty well. Won't take much convincing, especially when they're out of forage, or think they are. Come on, girls. And they're on the new grass, and they're excited about it. They go all the way to the other end. Give me time to do these things. See what the mineral looks like. It's got quite a bit. One of these on. I need to get that one on sleds so I can move it a little easier. But speaking of quality forage and quality water and so forth, a quality mineral is certainly key too. I can tell the difference, and they seem to just stay a little healthier as a result. What do you think, girls? Happier now? Yeah. Yeah, they're happier now. And if they're happier, I am too. Everybody's running around looking for the best little section, best little bite, and they'll settle in and fill their bellies. Everybody's worried somebody's got something better than they do. So truth number 6 is that vet paradox. If you've watched any of my videos before, especially my lambing season last spring, you know I was very frustrated with my vet care and finding a good vet that could help take care of my sheep, help me take care of my sheep. What you're going to find is there's not a lot of vets out there that know small ruminants really well. That's certainly been my experience here. There are some good large animal vets, but they spend probably 98% or more of their time dealing with cattle and horses. And so they don't spend a lot of time with small ruminants. And often, by the time you know your small ruminant, your lamb, your sheep is having a problem, they are difficult to recover. They are difficult to lift back up. They're a prey animal, and so they hide what's going on with them very well. And so by the time you notice it, many times you're already behind the 8 ball. That's been my experience. So pay attention, spend some time with your animals, and so you know immediately when they're lingering, when they're hanging behind, when they're acting a little differently than the rest of the flock. That's the time to grab that animal up and check it out. And find a good vet that you can have a relationship with, even if they're not a sheep specialist or a lamb specialist. You want to have a relationship with them. You want them to visit your farm, see the context that you're raising your sheep in, and so you can build a certain amount of trust that they don't ask you to bring the animal to them every single time. If you tell them what's going on and they trust that you've made a good diagnosis, they can provide you the medicines, the shots, so you can treat your animals on farm for a little more reasonable cost than it's going to cost when you take them into the vet and they have to take time with that animal. So that's something I wish some people had told me, is that how difficult it was going to be to find veterinary care. And there was a major shift, granted, since I've obtained my livestock, in that a lot of the medicines that were available over the shelf, over the counter, just a couple of years ago, are no longer available to us. And so you're kind of mandated to have this relationship with the vet to obtain those medicines. So that's truth number 6. Vets are not easy to come by for sheep and small ruminants and lambs. So make sure you sort that out before you get them on your farm, not after. Truth number 7 is parasites are your real enemy, not predators. We definitely have predators here in the cove where we live, and everyone worries about coyotes and wild dogs, neighborhood dogs. I get it. Predators are dramatic, scary, and especially when they're visible, and especially after you've had an attack, God forbid. And we've had them, we've seen them, we've had attacks, and so they are scary, which is why we own guardian dogs. But you know what's killed more of my sheep than all those predators in the last 5 years? Parasites. And you're going to go to conferences potentially, and almost all of them are going to talk about parasites until they're blue in the face, and you're going to be tired of going to conferences and hearing about parasites. I know I am. One of my chief complaints is every conference I go to, all they talk about is parasites. So maybe that's a little overdone and boring and invisible, but I can confirm now that I've done this for 5 years, they're absolutely deadly. actual parasites and worms, but also just sickness, coccidia especially, has hurt my lambs, has hurt my lamb performance, has killed lambs of mine on multiple occasions. And when I didn't know what was happening, I simply lost lambs, and you will too if you don't pay attention to it. So here's what I wish someone had explained early to me. Every sheep has worms. That's normal. They're going to have worms. The problem comes when the worm load overwhelms them. So even parasite-resistant sheep, which are the sheep that I have here, which is a Katahdin cross. There's some St. Croix in there, which has a tremendous has a tremendous parasite resistance, and so do Katahdins. The problem comes when that worm load overwhelms them, and if you deworm on a schedule like the old book says, you're probably creating even more resistant worms in your flock. So the solution is what I'm doing, but often it's not enough. And the solution is rotation and observation. Being out here with your sheep, taking some time when you're rotating them around, taking some time when you're watering them, taking some time when you're supplementing them to pay attention to how they move. And I will say the number one thing I notice right before a sheep goes down, a lamb goes down, or even that I find a dead lamb, in retrospect, I saw that lamb lingering a day before, 2 days before. I saw that lamb laying down when everybody else was eating. I saw that lamb separated from the main flock. And oftentimes I blew it off. And now I know better than that. As soon as you see a lamb lingering, hanging out by themselves, laying down when everybody else is on their feet, you should know that something's going on with that lamb. Check their eye color for Formatia and deworm that sheep. Treat them for coccidia if that's what they have. Diverse pastures, rotating them on diverse pastures is some of the best medicine. There's natural deworming in a lot of different forages. But when you need to deworm, you need it to work, and you need to do it sooner than later. This isn't optional learning. This is kind of survival. You need to master parasites and sickness and disease, or it will master you and your flock and just start taking them out. And the last thing I'll say on that is, oftentimes you have this honeymoon period, the first 2 or 3 years. I think that was definitely my experience. Maybe it hasn't been yours, or maybe it won't be yours. But a lot of people talk about all of a sudden they have this parasite issue, or all of a sudden they have sickness, or all of a sudden they have coccidia. And because they didn't have it for the first 2 or 3 years, they had no issues when they first brought animals to their place. And that's pretty normal, because there was a very low parasite load, chances are, on your place before you brought livestock there. And then as you bring livestock there, that parasite load increases naturally, and you'll get more parasites in your animals. Or maybe the forage isn't the high quality, or maybe it was a harsher winter, so now where they would normally resist those parasites, they don't have it in them. Or maybe they're not getting the nutrition they need, they're not getting the right mineral they need, and they succumb to parasites where they were doing fine the year before. So a lot of variables there, but something you need to read about, watch videos about, and sometimes as boring as it is in those conferences, go to those sessions where they talk about parasites and how to deal with them on your farm. It's worth your time. So truth number 8. Truth number 8 is lambing season will absolutely reorganize your life. Now, if you only have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, maybe not. But if you have more than that, even a handful more, lambing season takes easily the most time, probably all year. Maybe weaning season takes a little bit more effort, but lambing season is right up there. Your barn checks, your field checks, late at night, early morning, super early in the morning will become normal. But here's what nobody tells you. Here's the truth of about lambing season is that 95, maybe 98% of the time the ewes can do all the heavy lifting. The ewes are going to be just fine without you. You don't need to be there for them. If you've done your nutrition right and you've fed them well and you've supplemented them at the right times, they're going to have that lamb just fine without you. And that lamb's going to recognize mom. They're going to do great without you. You're there for about the 5% of the time that sheep need help. And that's proven out for me for sure. I want to be there in short order after that lamb drops, so I can do what I need to do to clean them up, to put some iodine in their navel, maybe warm them up with a towel, drying them off. But those lambing kits that have like 30 items in there, you're going to use maybe 3 or 4 tops. Not to say that it's not nice to be prepared and have those other things on hand. I'm a kind of be prepared kind of guy too. But other than the attentiveness and the time there and the marking and the navel dipping, it's not hard. It's not difficult. And the ewe is going to handle 95% of the effort for you. It's the first time you go to a sheep sale or really a sheep conference, I've been to several, you'll think you entered another universe. Farmers who haven't said a word to you anywhere else or haven't replied to your emails will talk to you in an hour about what mineral they're using or what they're feeding or what kind of, where they got their ram from. I need to tighten this up some. Here's what I've learned. Sheep people can be extraordinarily generous with knowledge. Maybe a little bit suspicious with newcomers, but everybody is. They've seen too many people come and go, get sheep, neglect them, not take care of them, ask questions they could easily find out on their own, like how do I raise sheep? I mean, that's probably not the first question I would ask at a sheep conference or in an online sheep group is what breed should I get? And add no additional information. Online sheep groups can be simultaneously some of the best resources and the worst. You'll see great advice in the same message or same comment. You'll see terrible advice. So be careful what you're grabbing from online. Certainly take all of it with a grain of salt until you've validated it somewhere else or confirmed it somewhere else or done a good deal of research. What I would highly recommend, the truth is, you should find somebody that raises sheep in your local area, and you should become their customer first before you become their student. And that's what I opted to do. As I bought additional sheep and added to my flock, I took advantage of those opportunities to ask questions of those folks. Once I became a customer, they were far more receptive to helping me out and spending some time with you. So truth number 9 is sheep people can be kind of peculiar and hard to find. And everybody's selfish with their time, of course, right? We only have so much of it. But I would encourage you to become a customer and then the student. That's truth number 9. Tighten it right up. But truth number 10, you're going to fall in love with sheep despite yourself. That's what I think. That's been the truth for me. And I'm not sure what was going to happen. I thought I was going to get some sheep and put them on my place, help maintain my property, and I definitely have fallen in love with it. Not that I needed somebody to tell me that, but maybe it would have been nice to know that when you get these critters, while they might not have tons of personality, you fall in love with the process, you fall in love with the cycle of things, you fall in love with how they act on your property and how peaceful they are when they're happy, when they're healthy. So I certainly started with spreadsheets and profit projections and some ideas of where this was going to go. Everything doesn't have to be about numbers, especially when you get that first bottle lamb. And you'll tell yourself you're not going to name them. And maybe my wife was a big part of that for sure, but I was not opposed to it. Especially when you had that first bottle lamb and you've spent so much time trying to help them come into the world and be healthy. They go from livestock to somewhat of a pet. And you're going to have these ewes for so long that even though I haven't named them formally, I'm definitely very fond of some of them versus the others. I've known them for too long not to be. I have one that's overly freckled and we call her Freckles. I have one that's kind of crazy eye and that's what we call her. That's because I'm a sheep person now. I'm that peculiar sheep person I warned you about in truth number 9. The satisfaction just of watching healthy, great sheep, if I can speak, the satisfaction that comes from watching your healthy flock graze across your pasture is hard to describe until you've experienced it. I don't know what to say. It's not all about the business plan, although that's where my focus is now as I'm headed toward profitability in the next year or so. That's not why I started, and it's certainly not the number one thing that I enjoy about my sheep. I feel like I started sheep for very practical purposes, but I've kept sheep because somewhere between that first bottle lamb and the 100th bucket of water that I've carried, they've just become kind of part of the daily rhythm here at Triple H Farms. And my life is better for it. And that's why I fell in love with it. So I'll warn you, truth number 10, be careful. You might just fall in love with it too. And so I started with 6 sheep 5 years ago. A lot of books and YouTube videos and lots of local conferences, a lot of conferences I probably drove a little too far for. I've made every mistake, I hope, up till now. I'm sure I'll continue to. And I've spent a lot of money on things that maybe I didn't need to. Skimped on a few things I probably shouldn't have. And 5 years later, I'm working toward that profitability with my flock, and it's much more significant. I've got about 60 ewes now, headed toward 100. And those 10 truths definitely apply, I think, to most everybody, whether you start off with 2 or 6 like I encourage you to, or you're already turning a profit. The biggest truth is you're more capable than you think. This isn't as hard as you think. Sheep have been partnering with humans for thousands of years. With just a little bit of prep work, you can become a partner with a sheep flock too on your place. And I think you'll get a lot of satisfaction and maybe just fall in love with it. If this helped you at all, share it with somebody if you would. That's the best way you can help me. Drop a comment down in the comments. That's another way you can help. Continue the conversation with the community that we're building here. And subscribe if you'd like. Remember, sheep don't care about your age, your background, or your experience level. They just need water, some decent forage, and somebody to pay attention to them and love them. Until next time, this is Sheep Biz here at Triple H Farms in Tennessee. Keep learning, keep watching, and trust your sheep. They'll teach you everything you need to know.
I wake at dawn to the rooster song. Fields to tend where the nights are long. Tennessee hills roll like a hymn. I'm chasing a dream, though the odds are slim. Sheep dreams, grass and sky, building a life where the eagles fly. Sweat and hope in the soul I keep, counting stars, counting sheep.